What if I told you that the way you love right now is not really yours? Think about it. You believe you are making choices in your relationships. You believe you are free to decide who to give your heart to, when to stay, and when to walk away. But what if all of this is an illusion? What if the love you experience today, your patterns, your fears, even your deepest desires were programmed long before you ever had a chance to choose? Your love life is not a choice. It was programmed when you were powerless. This is why you keep loving too much, giving more than you receive, and mistaking dependency for devotion. It's why you panic at the thought of losing someone, even when that relationship is destroying you. It's why, time after time, you fall for the same type of person, the one who wounds you in ways that feel strangely familiar. And that's not a coincidence. It's not bad luck. It's not fate playing a cruel trick on you. It's conditioning. When you were a child, you didn't have power. You couldn't walk away from a neglectful parent. You couldn't negotiate with a mother who only gave affection when you behaved perfectly. You couldn't confront a father who was absent, distracted, or unpredictable. You simply adapted. You learned to beg for scraps of love. You learned to please, to shrink yourself, to silence your pain because survival depended on it. And here's the brutal truth. Those lessons never left you. They became the blueprint for your adult relationships. Without even realizing it, you are not loving freely, you are repeating. Repeating the wounds, repeating the fear, repeating the drama you once had no choice but to endure. So the real question is not, why do I keep choosing the wrong people? The real question is, who inside of me is doing the choosing? Before we dive deeper, let me ask you for one thing. If what you've heard so far already speaks to you, don't just scroll away. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, turn on the notification bell. That way, you will be the very first to know when I release the next video packed with insights that could completely shift the way you see yourself and the way you live. Because trust me, what's coming next is not just content. It's a mirror. And it might just be the wake-up call you've been waiting for. Let's step back for a moment and imagine a child. She's 5 years old, sitting at the dinner table. Her parents are too busy, too stressed, too distracted. When she speaks too loudly, she's told to be quiet. When she cries, she's told to stop making a scene. The only time she feels truly noticed is when she's polite, obedient, and smiling. So what does she learn? That love is conditional. That to be seen, she must please. To be accepted, she must sacrifice pieces of herself. Fast forward 20 years. That little girl is now a grown woman. On the outside, she's strong, ambitious, maybe even successful. But in her relationships, she still carries the invisible script written in childhood. She gives endlessly. She bends over backwards to avoid conflict. She tolerates neglect, excuses cruelty, swallows her needs, because deep down, love still feels like something that has to be earned. Does this sound familiar? Now picture another child, a boy this time. His father left when he was young. His mother, overwhelmed and exhausted, was physically there but emotionally absent. Sometimes she would hold him close, but more often she drifted away into her own storms. The boy never knew if she'd be present or distant, loving or cold. So what does he learn? That love is unreliable. That connection can vanish at any moment. That closeness always comes with the terror of abandonment. Fast forward 20 years, this boy is now a man. He falls in love quickly, intensely. He clings tightly to his partner, terrified of losing her. Every unanswered text feels like rejection. Every small argument feels like the beginning of the end. His need for reassurance becomes suffocating. Not because he's weak, but because his nervous system was wired in a world where love could disappear without warning. And here's the haunting truth. These children are not rare exceptions. They are us. The way you love today is not random. It is a mirror of the ways you first received or didn't receive love. It is the echo of unmet needs, unspoken fears, and Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human soul, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that. The partners you choose, the heartbreaks you endure, the patterns you can't seem to escape, they are not fate. They are your unconscious at work. They are your inner child replaying the same story, hoping for a different ending. That's why you keep falling for the same type of person. That's why you confuse intensity with intimacy. That's why you tolerate behaviors that betray you. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because somewhere inside, your unconscious believes, this is what love feels like. This is familiar. But familiarity is not freedom, and repeating pain is not destiny. Here's where the story turns. When you start to recognize these patterns, when you stop blaming luck, or fate, or your partner, you begin to see the truth. You are not cursed. You are conditioned. You are carrying an old map that no longer matches the territory of your adult life. The little girl who had to please to feel loved, she doesn't live in your past. She lives in you right now. Every time you say yes when you want to say no. Every time you smile when you're breaking inside. Every time you choose peace over honesty. The little boy who feared abandonment, he's not just a memory. He's alive in your body every time your chest tightens when your partner pulls away. Every time you text too much, ask for reassurance again, or panic when you feel distance. And here's the hardest part. These children are innocent. They're not your enemy. They did the best they could with the little power they had. But they are not supposed to drive your adult relationships. This is where Jung's words become a roadmap. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your unconscious is like a hidden puppeteer, pulling the strings of your love life. But once you see the strings, once you recognize the child behind your reactions, you can begin to take your power back. So let me ask you, when you think of the way you love today, your fears, your habits, your heartbreaks, can you trace them back to the child you once were? Can you see her bending, pleasing, silencing herself just to be loved? Can you see him clinging, panicking, begging not to be left behind? If you can, then you're already beginning to wake up. Because the truth is this: love does not have to be a repetition of your wounds. Love can be conscious. Love can be free. But only if you have the courage to look back, not to blame your parents. Not to stay trapped in your pain, but to finally see the unconscious script for what it is. Just a script. One that can be rewritten. And the pen now is in your hands. Now that we've looked at the childhood mirror, let's go deeper. Let us strip away the illusions and face the uncomfortable truth about love. What you call choice is often nothing more than repetition. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, once argued that adult love is not new, it's a reenactment. He called it the repetition compulsion. In simple terms, this means that we unconsciously repeat the dynamics of our earliest relationships with our parents or caregivers. If love in childhood was neglectful, you will unconsciously be drawn to neglect. If love were conditional, you would unconsciously seek partners who force you to earn their approval. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself dating the same type of person, even when you swore you'd never do it again? That's not an accident. That's your psyche at work, replaying old wounds in the hope of finally healing them. Freud believed we are driven by a deep urge to resolve unfinished business from childhood. So we choose partners who resemble our parents, not always in appearance, but in emotional style. The cold, distant father becomes the emotionally unavailable boyfriend. The controlling mother becomes the demanding girlfriend. And each time, we hope that maybe this time, we'll get the love we never received. But Carl Jung took this idea further. For Jung, what we fall in love with is not just another person, it's our own unconscious. He introduced the concept of the shadow, the hidden side of ourselves that contains everything we've repressed or denied. The anger we were told to suppress, The vulnerability we were told was weakness. The needs we were told were too much. These fragments of ourselves don't disappear. They live in the shadow. And here's the fascinating part. We are irresistibly drawn to people who carry the traits we've buried in our own shadow. The partner who triggers your deepest insecurity. They are mirroring the part of you that you haven't yet accepted. The partner who abandons you. They awaken the wound of abandonment you've never healed. Jung's insight was clear. The people we love most intensely often wound us the deepest, not because they are cruel, but because they awaken the shadow we've tried to forget. That's why your love life feels like destiny. It's not destiny, it's psychology. It's your shadow calling for attention. And then comes Erich Fromm, a modern voice who dismantled one of the greatest myths about love, that love is a feeling. Fromm argued that love is not an accident, not a magical force, not something you fall into. Love, he said, is an art. It is a skill to be learned, practiced, and mastered. But here lies the problem. How do you learn the art of love when your first teachers were broken themselves? If your childhood taught you that love means self-erasure, then your skill in loving becomes the skill of disappearing. If your childhood taught you Fromm's point was that most people never truly love. They confuse dependency, obsession, or projection with love. Why? Because the skills they learned were distorted from the start. And unless you become conscious of this distortion, you will keep calling dysfunction love and emptiness, connection. Now let's bring Freud, Jung, and Fromm together. Freud tells us, you are repeating your parents. Jung tells us, you are loving your shadow. Fromm tells us, you are practicing a broken skill. Put all three together, and the message is unmistakable. Your love life is not free, it is programmed, it is a cycle. But here's the good news, cycles can be broken, shadows can be integrated, skills can be relearned. The science and philosophy of love converge on one truth: awareness is the doorway. The moment you see that your partner is not just the wrong one, but a mirror of your unconscious. The moment you recognize that your pain is not fate but repetition. The moment you realize that love is not just a feeling but a discipline, everything changes. Because then you are no longer a puppet of your past. You are no longer trapped in the role of the child, begging for love. You begin, finally, to love as an adult, consciously, freely, with eyes wide open. Let's get brutally honest for a moment. Because theory is important, but nothing shakes you to your core like seeing your own life in these patterns. You keep falling for the same type of toxic partner. You swear it'll be different this time. You tell yourself you've learned your lesson, that you'll recognize the signs, that you'll walk away at the first red flag. And yet, months later, you find yourself in the same storm, with the same pain, just wearing a different face. Maybe it's the boyfriend who promises the world but vanishes when you need him most. Maybe it's the girlfriend who drains you with endless demands, always taking but never giving back. Sometimes they charm you, sometimes they manipulate you. But the result is always the same. You end up smaller, lonelier, emptier. And deep down you know it. You can see the pattern. But something in you can't let go. Why? Because chaos feels like love. Your nervous system was trained to associate turbulence with affection. Calm feels alien, unsafe. So instead of seeking stability, you unconsciously return to the storm. Or maybe for you, it's the confusion between intensity and love. You crave the butterflies, the sleepless nights, the obsessive highs and crushing lows. You think, this must be real love that consumes me so completely. But let's be clear. Intensity is not intimacy. That fire you feel when someone pulls you close and pushes you away is not passion, it's re-traumatization. The nervous system remembers the inconsistent parent, the unpredictable caregiver, the push and pull that defined your first experience of love. So when you meet someone who stirs up that same energy, your unconscious whispers, "This feels familiar. This must be love," but it's not love, it's repetition. And then there's the fear of being alone. You tell yourself, I just don't want to be lonely. But the truth is deeper, darker. Being alone means facing the silence where all the old wounds rise to the surface. So you cling. You hold on long after the relationship has died. You tolerate disrespect. You silence your own needs. You accept crumbs and call them meals because dependency feels safer than emptiness. You call it love, but what it really is fear dressed in the language of devotion. Now pause. Which of these feels like you? The toxic cycle? The obsession with intensity? The terror of being alone? Maybe all three. And that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human and you're running on a script you didn't write. Carl Jung said something that cuts straight to the heart of this. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that. The people you're drawn to, the heartbreaks you repeat, the suffering you can't escape, they are not bad luck. They are your unconscious pulling you back into the same story again and again, desperate for resolution. Let's make it even more real. Think about the last time you begged for love in ways you don't like to admit. Maybe you texted again and again, waiting for a reply that never came. Maybe you apologized for something that wasn't your fault, just to avoid conflict. Maybe you twisted yourself into knots, trying to be the version of you that would finally make them stay. Was that love, or was it survival? Think about the last time you silenced yourself. You wanted to say no, but the words stuck in your throat. You wanted to speak the truth, but you forced a smile instead. You told yourself that losing a part of you was better than losing the relationship. So you gave in, you kept the peace, but inside you were at war. And think about the last time you mistook obsession for connection. The endless scrolling, checking if they'd liked your post, rereading their messages, spiraling when they pulled away. You called it love. But love is not supposed to feel like a constant emergency. Love is not supposed to make you feel like you're drowning. That's not love, it's trauma reenactment. These are not random mistakes, they are echoes. They are the fingerprints of childhood all over your adult relationships. Different partners, different settings, but the same core wound repeating itself until you finally see it. So let me ask you directly, how long will you keep calling your wound love? How many times will you confuse fear for intimacy, chaos for passion, dependency for devotion? Because here's the hard truth. Awareness is the only way out. The moment you recognize yourself in these patterns, you've already broken part of their hold. Because what you see, you can choose to change. What you name, you can begin to heal. And the moment you begin to heal, you stop living on autopilot. You stop mistaking the unconscious for destiny. You stop handing your love life over to the ghosts of your childhood. That's when, for the first time, you begin to taste what real love actually feels like. Up until now, we've uncovered some painful truths. Your love life is not random. It has been programmed, shaped by childhood wounds, fueled by unconscious patterns, repeated again and again. And yet, here's the most liberating truth of all. This is not truly you. You are not the abandoned child clinging to anyone who stays. You are not the people pleaser desperate for approval. You are not the broken adult repeating toxic cycles as if you were cursed. Those are roles you were forced into, masks you had to wear when you had no power. They kept you alive when you were small, but now they are keeping you from living. Carl Jung believed that the real purpose of life was not perfection, but individuation, the process of becoming whole. Individuation is not about fixing yourself, because you are not broken. It is about seeing all the fragmented pieces of who you are, your light, your darkness, your wounds, your strength, and integrating them into one authentic self. Think about it this way, right now. Your love may be a battlefield between your conscious desires and your unconscious wounds. Individuation is when you stop fighting yourself. When you stop running from your shadow and instead embrace it. When you finally realize that the child in you who screams for attention, or clings in terror, or sacrifices everything to be loved, is not your enemy. They are simply unhealed parts of you asking to be seen. And when you see them, when you hold them with compassion instead of judgment, something shifts. Love stops being a repetition of your past. It becomes a choice. Alan Watts once said that true love is not about possession or control, but about freedom. Love is not chaining another person to your fears. It's not demanding that they fill your emptiness or validate your worth. True love is standing in your own wholeness and allowing the other to stand in theirs. It is not a prison, it is a dance. But here is the catch. You can only love with freedom when you are free within yourself. If your inner child is still begging for scraps of affection, you will cling. If your shadow is still denied, you will project it onto your partner. If your wounds are still unacknowledged, you will call them passion. That is why healing is not optional. Without it, love remains in bondage. With it, love becomes liberation. So what does the path of healing look like? First, awareness. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. This means becoming radically honest with yourself. What patterns keep repeating in your relationships? Who do you become when you are afraid of losing someone? Where do you abandon yourself in order not to be abandoned by another? Write it down. Face it without sugarcoating. Because the act of naming the pattern already weakens its grip. Second, integration. Jung taught that everything we reject in ourselves lives in the shadow. Healing means inviting those parts back in. The anger you suppressed as a child, it needs to be expressed safely. The vulnerability you were shamed for, it needs to be honored. The needs you silenced, they need to be voiced. Integration is not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. Third, practice. Erich Fromm was right. Love is not a feeling, it is an art, which means you must practice new ways of loving. Practice setting boundaries even when it scares you. Practice sitting with loneliness instead of rushing to fill it. Practice choosing partners who are safe, even when your old programming screams they are boring. Every small act of conscious love rewires the script. And finally, surrender. Alan Watts reminded us that love is not about holding tighter, it is about letting go. Letting go of the illusion that someone else will complete you. Letting go of the idea that love means sacrifice or suffering. Letting go of the belief that your past defines your future. Real love, the kind that liberates, begins when you stop clinging and start allowing. So let me ask you, what would it feel like to love without fear? To love without the chains of childhood wounds? To love not because you need someone to fill the emptiness, but because you are already whole and you simply want to share that wholeness. That is the path of individuation. That is the healing journey. It's not easy. It demands courage. It demands honesty. It demands that you face the parts of yourself you've avoided your whole life. But the reward is extraordinary. Because on the other side of this journey, love is no longer programming. It is freedom. And when you reach that place, you will finally understand. You were never broken. You were only unfinished. Your childhood wrote the first chapter of how you love. But you are the author now. Let that sink in. For years, maybe decades, you've been living inside a script that was written for you when you were powerless. A script shaped by neglect, by conditional affection, by wounds you never asked for. And every time you've loved, every time you've lost, every time you've found yourself in the same cycle of pain, you've been reading lines that were never truly yours. But here's the truth. You don't have to keep playing the same role. You don't have to keep telling the same story. You can put the pen back in your own hands. This is not about blaming the past. Your parents gave you what they could. Some of them gave love mixed with absence. Some gave attention tied to conditions. Some simply weren't capable of giving what you needed. That is their story. But your story does not have to end there. Carl Jung reminded us that the greatest gift we can give ourselves is to bring the unconscious into the light. That means looking at the parts of you you've been afraid to face, the fear of abandonment, the hunger for approval, the wounds that keep whispering, you are not enough. It means daring to walk into your shadow, not to get lost in it, but to reclaim the power hidden there. Because inside those wounds is not weakness, it's your strength. Inside that fear is not failure, it's the doorway to freedom. And when you finally turn toward those shadows with compassion instead of denial, something extraordinary happens. You stop being ruled by them. You stop calling them fate. You stop confusing them with love. Think about what that means. Imagine a love where you don't have to beg, prove, or perform. Imagine a love where you are not consumed by fear every time someone steps back. Imagine a love where calm feels safe, not boring. That kind of love is possible, but it begins with you. Alan Watts once said that true love is not about clinging, it's about freedom. It's about giving the other person the space to be fully themselves, while you stand fully as yourself. No masks, no scripts, no chains, just presence, just a choice. Just love. But before you can love someone else in freedom, you must first free yourself. Free yourself from the belief that you are unworthy. Free yourself from the cycle that tells you chaos is passion. Free yourself from the illusion that love must equal pain. And yes, it's hard. Facing yourself is always harder than blaming others. Looking at your patterns is harder than pointing at fate. But what's the alternative? To live another decade trapped in the same cycles? To keep mistaking survival for intimacy? To keep handing your power to a story that doesn't belong to you? The choice is yours. Your childhood wrote the first chapter, but you hold the pen now. You can write a new story, one where love is not a battlefield, not a prison, not a repetition of your wounds. One where love is a conscious choice, a creative act, a celebration of two whole people meeting, not two broken halves clinging out of fear. So here's my invitation to you. Dare to look into your own darkness. Dare to ask yourself the questions you've been running from. Who am I when I'm not trying to be loved? What do I truly need, not what I was taught to need? What would love look like if it weren't chained to fear? Sit with those questions. Write them down. Meditate on them. Let them unsettle you. Because it's in that discomfort that awakening begins. And when you begin to awaken, everything changes. The people you attract change. The way you show up in relationships changes. Most importantly, the way you see yourself changes. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not doomed to repeat the same patterns forever. You are simply unfinished. And the rest of your story is waiting to be written by the only person who has the power to write it, you. So take a breath, take the pen, and start writing. If this message resonated with you, don't just walk away unchanged. Take a moment, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel, and make sure you turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss the next video, each one crafted to awaken something deeper inside you. And I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments which part of today's video spoke to you the most, or what lesson you're taking with you. Your story might be the spark that helps someone else awaken too.